need we recessed until 6:30. It's 6:31. I don't think we need a motion to reconvene. So let's start our regular meeting at 6:30 p.m. Let's start with a Pledge of Allegiance. And Brian, you're a great middle school teacher at 10 years. You did an excellent job last week, so we're going to follow your cue. Everybody please mute and follow along with former grade math teacher of mine, Brian Delorier.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, so agenda item number, well, before we move on to agenda item number 3, I'd like to move up agenda item 7A, our new hire, to the top of our agenda, our new agenda item number 3. In order to do that, we need a board action. So if someone would make a motion to move item 7A, be our new agenda item 3. An agenda amendment. We just need a motion in a second. So we're making 7. Yep.
I'm so moved. If that's if I can do it that quickly.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Perfect. Carrie, take it away.
You can do it that quickly, Brian. So I'm excited to introduce to those on the call and the town of St. Albans residents that our newest employee, Emily Sharington, is on the call with us this evening. Normally we'd have her come to a select board meeting, but this is the next best thing right now. Emily comes to us with a lot of stormwater experience. I'm not going to go over her whole resume. It's pretty impressive, but she's pretty humble about it. So she is starting as our stormwater coordinator, one of the first employee for our new stormwater utility. So we're pretty excited about that. She's jumped in with both feet, quite literally. So please, if you'd like, Emily, you can say a couple things about yourself. And this is, I just want to say welcome, I guess. I'm excited to have you.
So I'm 1 week in, so it's still on the bottom of the learning curve here, but I've been working pretty closely with Corey, trying to get billing straightened out so that we can be on track for sending out bills beginning of, or I guess mid-July is the date we're shooting for. And I think we're looking pretty good. I think we went through some little details today. I have some more fine tuning to make on our information, but I think we're in decent shape, so.
Does anybody, yeah, I think that's great. Do you want to add anything, Corey?
No, I mean, we've been on an aggressive timeline since the select board passed, the ordinance last fall to get everything in place. And, if you think about it, the ordinance has only been in place for effectively after the waiting period for about 5 months now. And, we got the credit in place. We've got Emily on board. She's doing a fantastic job. She's got her first 90 days pretty roped out, but she's, got a great background to help us meet our water quality and MS4 needs coming up. So I'm excited to have her on board.
I think that's it. It's not a lot more formal than that normally. Does anyone have any questions or follow-up?
I have 2 points, Gary. One, Emily, thank you for joining our staff. Having you come aboard, it's been a date that we've been working towards for a number of years now. Thank you to former Planning Commission Chair Aaron Creeley for all the work that you and your Planning Commission members did to allow us to get to the point where Emily could be here. 2, very sorry that you have to work in our boardroom. We are working on that. There will be a new town hall. Feel free to bring a hybrid work from home model to the manager if that boardroom doesn't suit you. But we are working to build you some new office space. And if you find anything that you need from us, work that right through Corey and Gary, and we're happy to help you. I know that we're probably in need of an ordinance amendment at some point. I think a lot of the enforcement and compliance pieces were pointed at the Director of Public Works, and with you here in your background, I don't know if that needs to be that way anymore. But any amendments that you see fit, please run them up the flagpole. We'll probably start with the Planning Commission and work its way here, but you're the expert, and we're all really grateful and appreciative to have you aboard, and any way that we can help you, we're here.
Okay, thank you. I know I've talked to Corey earlier today about the process for making amendments to it. So I think after we get through the billing cycle, getting all of that dialed in, I think we'll be able to reach the ordinance pretty quickly.
Sweet. Does anybody have any questions for Emily? Again, on behalf of our whole town, really excited to have you. Thank you for joining our staff, and we're looking forward to getting a lot of great things done with you.
Thanks, likewise.
Thanks,
Take care.
Emily.
So, unless anybody else has a last minute comment or question, we'll move on to the warrants. Let's start with Aaron and payroll, if we could.
Sure. So today we have 2 payroll warrants. One for, let's see, I'll get them in order here. One dated 4/23, and the other one dated 4/30. For April 23rd, 2021, that total amount is $17,226.43. And then for April 30th, 2021, that is for $34,105.76. And I will make a motion to approve the payroll warrants as stated and described.
Second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Okay. Now we have, we just have one infrastructure development warrant for $1,805 to Peterson Consulting. If anyone would like to make a motion to approve the infrastructure development warrant. Just need a so moved in a second.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Perfect. Okay, Jonathan, you have the general fund?
General fund dated April 30th, 2021, in the amount of $46,736.34. Nothing really popping out on there. The biggest item that I saw was the payment to Sedavin City Recreation Department.
That was $11,379. That was our quarterly payment as part of our rec reimbursement program to equalize town resident rates with city residents. One of the ways the town and city work together to make life easier for residents on both sides of the border. I had just one or two quick questions. Wondering, FW Webb's, I'm just wondering what $4,200 buys us in culverts, if Alan's around. Just how many culverts that is for $4,200. But Alan's not here, so I'll ask that later on. Not a big deal, I was just curious. And then as we saw in our rough budget on Cohen Park, the hoops and nets for dollars would be charged to the Bay Dock expense budget, and you'll see that $5,000 of that has already been passed through in this warrant, and that $5,000 was actually spent with Kevin Smith Sports Connections. So we're using local vendors to help build this project at Cohen Park. In the course of other business, I was speaking with a guy that lives around the corner from Cohen Park, Jim Hungerford. I think he's like 2 or 3 driveways down, and his company, Hungerford Paving, is going to do the final coat at the town garage and do the paving of the parking area and courts. So we're using one-time money to renovate a park, and we're keeping the business local. Really great. Yeah, and then I had asked Corey and Terry, Ascent Consulting, Matt Young, for $1,200. That was related to our earmark application to Congressman Welch for $4.3 million for the Bay Dock and Stonehouse. Matt is a professional estimator that worked for very large firms in a past life, and he updated our renovation budgets for the dock and the Stonehouse today's pricing to make sure that our application was at today's numbers and not 5 years ago. So that was $1,200 spent. Unfortunately, we did not receive an earmark from Congressman Welch. He said he had over 100. I think he said, Corey, that there were over 100, and then he could only pick a couple.
200.
There were 200, and he can only pick 10.
Yep.
So, we hope that we got in the last few percentage, and it was hard to not pick us, but we didn't get that one. Then noticed 4/30/21 Lowe's, $1,099. That's my only question. Wanted to keep it light and ask about an individual expense in honor of Stan Dukas. I know he would have. Alan, we had $1,099 on the 30th of April at Lowe's. I'm gonna ask you what that was before we approve this warrant.
I believe that was FRP for the bathrooms at Cohen, couple sinks, the glues, the brushes, renovations for the bathrooms at Cohen Park.
Fair enough. Stanley would be proud. So,
Brendan, you are glitching out hard.
anybody else?
Nope, nobody can hear you.
It doesn't sound good.
Hang on.
Or
Oh, no, it's totally gone.
maybe it does.
Well, while he's coming back, basically, we need a motion for that.
Yeah, I was going to ask one question, Carrie. I was looking at the $4,500 charge for Paul, Frank, and Collins. I assume that's for the training that we did. I was just curious, is that for the training that's happened? And if there's additional training, will we need more money, or does that cover trainings we've had and future trainings?
That covered the training that we held both for the board and for employees, but we did also apply for a grant from a VLCT, our liability carrier, and they covered that training. So it's
That's
a little
correct.
more. I'm sorry, what?
That's correct.
Right. So if we have additional training, it will cost us more, but we didn't have to pay out of pocket for that.
Was that $4,500 charge to that consulting firm that does training we were talking
Yes.
about? Okay.
Yes, it was.
perfect. My internet connection's unstable, so Jess, if I ever have to bow out, feel free to take over if I drop off. Whatever you need to do to keep running smoothly. But do we have a motion on the floor to approve the general fund warrant?
Not
No,
yet.
I'll make the motion right now to approve the general fund warrant in the amount of $46,736.34.
I'll second it.
Jessica wins it, that one. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so I think those were all of our warrants for the evening. I missed anything? We all set, Anna?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Now we have minutes in front of us for our last meeting, April 19th. Does anybody have any comments or edits? Hearing none, I'd ask for a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes before us.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Jen, for another high-quality set of minutes. We appreciate it very much.
My pleasure.
Now we're on to agenda item, which is now 6. That's a public comment. We had in our board packets a presentation from town resident Jack Nickel, who used to serve on our planning commission, about retail cannabis in St. Albans. We've all had a chance, Jack, I know you're here to make a public comment. We've all had a chance to read your presentation. So if you'd like to jump on, you've got about 3 or 4 minutes to be able to, have us field your questions, but just act as if we've all read the entire presentation and have a fairly good understanding of it. I'll start by asking, does anybody have any specific questions from this presentation for Jack that we could start with before Jack introduces himself? I know we have more than just Jack on the call on this meeting related to this topic of retail cannabis, even though it wasn't on the agenda. And we'll make sure that anybody who wants to make a public comment has an opportunity to make one. Did anybody have any specific questions that jumped out from this presentation before we get started?
No.
Right, so Jack, are you with us?
Yeah, hey, how's it going, guys?
Hey, Jack, so feel free to take over, take 3 minutes or so to just explain why you're here, and we've already read the presentation, so.
Okay, great, thanks. So good evening. I appreciate the Town of St. Albans Select Board for allowing me the few minutes to present tonight. So yeah, my name is Jack Nickel. I'm a resident of the city of St. Albans, and I'm a local business owner in the legal cannabis industry already. The purpose of my presentation, or I'm sorry, the purpose of this, I guess, this introduction here, is really to introduce the idea of legal retail sales here in St. Albans. And I guess my hope is that by the end of, more of these interactions, whether they be via Zoom or in person as we get through the pandemic, everyone can hopefully feel a little bit more comfortable with the idea of it happening here in the city, in the town, or the community. As I don't know, we work to really try to dispel stigmas and educate people as much as possible between now and when it happens. So I guess my reason for the town to look at this topic now rather than wait for 2022 to roll back around for us to try to vote on it again at a town meeting day, is because I really think it's important for the community to identify who they want to work with here, and get ahead of this early, such that we're not trying to cram a whole bunch of work and planning into which could be about 6 months of a time frame here between February 2022, I'm sorry, 8 months, and the opening of what could be the opening of the store come October 2022, when the small businesses are allowed to do it for those who have licenses. So what do we have to do to get there? That means that basically we have to, or I have to, get a special vote called. That's my responsibility to get the signatures of the town and the city in order for that to happen. And after if that is successful, which I feel pretty strongly it would be, then really the town and the city start to identify, who in the community they want to be able to basically have the responsibility to do this, because this is going to be a super high profile, highly scrutinized business. I just feel like probably the town and the city would want someone who's familiar with the process and is not going to, I don't know, just, who's honest, I guess is the best way to put it. And finally, the third part of doing all of this would be to work with those people that you've identified. And as the CCB, the Cannabis Control Board in Montpelier, starts to disseminate the information and the parameters for everyone who's interested in doing this, to start to, the town, the city, the interested business owners, as well as the community, all doing these kind of things to start to talk this out as this starts to come to head. So yeah, that's really my introduction here, and the reason why I'm trying to do this now and not wait for 2022. Just as a heads up, I also have Jeffrey Pizzatillo here. He's the co-founder for Vermont Growers Association. I asked him to be here just in case any of the select board had any particular policy questions, because he's in Montpelier all the time and would know right off the top of his head better than I would exactly what the law would state, as opposed to me, who's just a business owner trying to do something. So thank you very much. And I guess I'll mute myself until somebody has a question or not.
I have a question. Jeff, can you spell your last name, because it's cut off at the end?
Yeah, sure. It's Nichol.
Great, thank you.
I just had a couple questions. I don't know if it's Jack or Jeff would be better, but your understanding, if is it going to be like with liquor sales where there's kind of one store, or could there be more than that? And the second question, if there was a retail store, would the product be grown on site, or would it be off site somewhere else? How does that?
I can answer that. I can answer that. So I'm working under the assumption that Montpelier is only going to give us one license. St. Albans has, I think, around 13,500 people between the town and the city. I don't want to get into hypotheticals and talk for anybody, but if I was looking at a community that had only 13,000 people, I would say they probably only need one license for retail. So under that assumption, that's why I'm coming to you now. 2, would it be grown on site? I personally wouldn't be asking for a growing license. I would just want to have the retail license and possibly the processing. My business is in Georgia Center. That's where I'm at right now. if I could bring it to the city or the town and put the two together, that'd be great. I sell cannabis processing equipment. But typically, and Jeffrey, and you can chime in here as soon as I'm done. I do not think that all the growing will be done on site, only because you have to be able to supply the demand for whatever community that you're in, and who's to say that you're going to have a facility big enough to grow on site. Really, the idea is going to be to buy from growers that are licensed in the area from the Vermont government. That's how it's probably going to roll. And Jeffrey, if you have anything.
Yeah, and thanks everybody for your time and for allowing Jack to speak to this important matter. Just to provide some points of clarity, the opt-in under Act 164, which is the name of the law, is only for retail operations. So there are other license types. Not every license type is spelled out in the Act, but it starts with defining some. And those that are defined are allowed to operate in towns without opt-in approval. So again, just to clarify, this is just for retail operations. That would notably be the integrated license type, which is a dispensary, and then also the retail license type. So that's really what we're talking about in terms of town approval. So that means theoretically there can be cultivators, distributors, processors, and whatnot in St. Albans and other towns that even choose not to engage in an opt-in vote. So some points of clarity there. What can the town regulate when you guys ultimately have businesses, if you allow that? Under Act 64. So the town does have some authority, mostly surrounding zoning, sign ordinances, and nuisance ordinances. So you guys are also able to set up similar to a liquor control board in your town. The towns do not have authority under Act 164 to prohibit any specific license beyond the retail license vis-a-vis opt-in. Yeah, and that's really about it. You guys, really what we're talking about and what I've have spoken to with other towns across the state is really allowing select boards and as much time as possible to develop their own ordinances, bylaws, configure a board, and really it's a race at this point in time. And it's not just a race within Vermont, as Jack has sort of alluded to, but it's also a race amongst our neighbors as well. So it's about positioning ourselves as early as we can in adopting this market that's inevitable, and just making sure that each town is in a comfortable position, whether it's one retail location or 5 retail locations, affording yourselves as much time as possible to make those decisions. I'll also add, there is a bill in the State House right now that will reform this opt-in. If the bill were to become enacted, if a town does not vote to opt in retail operations by 2023, they are automatically opted in. Again, it's a bill. It has not been enacted, but that's where, just to give you guys an idea, that's where our State House is going this year. So, and happy to take any questions about Act 164.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Aaron?
Yeah, I had a question for Jack. You mentioned that based on the population of the St. Albans area, that it may make sense for just one license. Was that just as a business owner kind of making a speculation about what the town and or city might approve? Or is that based on kind of knowledge about the legislation or where the board, this body that is being enacted is kind of going?
Yeah, okay, so great question, Aaron. And that was, to be clear, that's complete conjecture. That's my opinion. For all we know, the Cannabis Control Board, which was just finalized, what was it, like 3 or 4 weeks ago, they're going to look at a map of Vermont and they're going to say Franklin County, or they're going to look at these communities and they're going to say one here, 2 there. I'm just guessing. It could be, St. Albans Town and St. Albans City could get one. I don't know. But I guess I'm just operating under the assumption that we are only going to get one. And if we are only going to get one, then, I'm just trying to kind of throw my hat in the mix, obviously, and get ahead of it now and, just do everything like I said, like I just talked about. That's all. Yeah.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Any other board member have a question for Jack before we open it up to other public comment? Okay, is anybody else here? Would you like to make a comment related to this discussion? Amy Brewer, I see your hand up.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I just want to introduce myself for those of you who don't know me. My name is Amy Brewer. I coordinate the Franklin Grand Isle Tobacco Prevention Coalition, and I'm here with Crystal Lampman, who's the Executive Director of Franklin County Caring Communities. Crystal often has bad internet, so I'm going to do the talking, and Crystal's going to nod or shake her head as I misspeak. But what I wanted to do is just spend just a couple minutes to tell you, just kind of give the youth perspective. So the two coalitions that we represent, one of our roles is to protect youth from substance use that can cause them harm, either immediate harm or harm into the future. So I just want to make sure that we're understanding cannabis and youth. I know Jack and Jeffrey are really talking about adult use, and I just want to make sure that we're talking a little bit about how that might impact youth, so that you can make informed decisions when that time comes. So I'm going to give you a little bit statistics from the Youth Risk Behavior Survey that's put out by the Department of Health and taken by almost all of our students. This is high school data. Bear with me. I'm going to give you a chunk of time between 2013 and 2019. It gives you a little understanding of trends. Past use of cannabis in the past 30 days has risen steadily between 2013 and 2019. 2019 is the last year that we have data. It's risen from 18% up to 23%. So from 18 to 23%, and I'm specifically talking about the Maple Run Unified School District, which is the BFA St. Albans. Youth perception of harm has decreased in that same time range. It's gone from 32% of high school students thinking that it could cause great harm, and it's decreased to 25% of those students. Perceived parental disapproval. So students are asked, do you think your parents would disapprove of you using cannabis or marijuana? And that's actually decreased over that time frame from 86% thinking that their parents would disapprove down to 79%. And then the question is, do you think your peers would disapprove of you using cannabis or marijuana? And that's also decreased from 67% to 52%. So over time, what we're seeing is that youth are, their perception of harm, the perception that their peers and their parents think it might be okay, seems to be favoring use. And then we're also seeing youth use increase. So it's important to note that that's kind of the trend at Maple Run and in Vermont, but also to keep in mind that for youth in particular, cannabis use does have risks, whereas, adult use, nothing compares to cigarette use, right? We know that's the most harmful things, and I'm not talking about adult use, but for youth use with the developing brains, keep in mind that the earlier a youth uses a substance, the more at risk they are for using it more, for addiction. And cannabis can be addictive, especially if you begin using it young. And it can cause challenges with learning and memory, right? Those are all things that we want youth to, we want their brains to finish developing well so that they can become successful adults and not have the memory and learning impact and addiction. So all that in mind, I also want to add one more thing. And the reason we suspect that youth use and perceptions are changing in the way that they are is because cannabis has really become more normalized in our communities. So they see it more, they see people using it more. They see it kind of portrayed as medicine, which is really kind of confusing for young people. And they're seeing more ads. And that's true for alcohol and cigarettes. The more ads and the more product they see, the more likely they are to think it's a normal thing. So I just want to make sure that I give that perspective so that you can keep that in mind. And I'm going to stop talking for a second. If you guys have questions or if Crystal wants to correct me or add anything, I'll be quiet.
I was going to ask one quick question, Amy. So you said from 2013 to 2019, an increase from 18 to 23%. What do those numbers look like for just tobacco, that same age group?
Oh,
Did they increase too, or are they going down, going the other way?
so it's a trick question. So for cigarette use, the trend has been for youth, the perception of harm has increased. Will my parents kill me if I use this product for cigarettes? Increased. And the amount of students using cigarettes decreased until vapes came on the scene. And so students, we did so good with cigarettes are harmful, they'll kill you. And then vapes came on the scenes, and students didn't understand their harm and still don't to a certain extent. And their use is high. And I do have that. Would you like specific numbers?
If you have them right there, but that's,
I
think
don't go far without my
that's
tobacco
okay.
numbers.
Yeah, it's mostly just wanted to know what that trend was. So okay.
Yeah, so I can tell you, I'm going to give you Maple Run's data. Where is it? So e-cigarettes or vapes in the past 30 days, we first started asking that in 2015, and it was 17% at BFA, St. Albans. 2017, it was 12%. And then 2019, it was 31%. And then if you look at smoking, again, in the past 30 days, the same time frame in 2013, it was 11% of students would use cigarettes within the past 30 days. And in 2019, it was down to 7. And 7's getting into that really nice space of barely any students smoke cigarettes. So we've seen, cigarette trend go down, vaping kind of confuse everything. And then the reason, I'm tobacco prevention, right? But the reason I'm involved is because of vapes. You can use the one device for both substances, and a lot of students had access to that device. And so now they're using it. Whereas, cannabis use used to be smoked a lot more. It's now vaped a lot more by our young people.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Amy?
Amy, can you shoot me those numbers tomorrow via email, please?
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. They're for our minutes.
I just had a quick question, and this might be for Jeffrey, I'm not sure, but I'm just curious about, I haven't been able to keep up to date on some of the policy discussions around this, but what, if any, what kind of protections are kind of put in place around retail cannabis for youth? And if towns have any additional leeway that they have if they wanted to. So I'm just thinking, as a select board, is there any tools in our toolkit that we specifically might have through this legislation to consider retail cannabis and youth use?
Great question. We don't want youth using the substance either. There is responsible use. We want to enforce that. I will say this, with regards to advertising, this is important when it comes to youth exposure, as we just mentioned, vis-a-vis, tobacco campaigns being effective. There is no advertising right now for the adult use marketplace. There is an effective ban on advertising as it stands now. If this bill, S25, were to pass, there will be advertising. Why do I bring this up? Local control allows advertising ordinances. So you guys have control over signing. So the more time you guys allow yourselves to deliberate on what's appropriate for, say, Albans Town or the city, I think the more, right, the more time that allows, for the appropriate decision to be arrived at. So things to think about. You guys do have tools in your toolkit from a municipality perspective to control and manage some of those items. So yes, absolutely.
Amy?
I believe zoning is also another tool that you can use.
So we've heard, Aaron, you've led us down a really good road. It's going to wrap up tonight's conversation very well for us, unless anybody has anything else they'd like to add. This was a good start. We've heard from both sides of an argument here, and it was well presented on both sides. So these are the decision points, as Corey would call them in my mind. The timeline. what do we want to do? I think we're going to need more information to supplement those decisions. Tax revenues, we need to forecast potentially what we could receive and where it would go. I personally love the idea of forecasting a tax revenue related to allowing a cannabis dispensary in the town and directing all of that money into our parks, if that's the direction we were going to go specifically. Zoning revisions, we're in the middle of, compiling information and forming thoughts on a bylaw update that'll be implemented probably by the end of this year, beginning of next year. I know Corey, Megan, and Carrie have had some discussions, and Emily may have some bylaw updates related to stormwater that might help the utility. So that might not be a bad time to maybe zone it away from schools, make it only a conditional use in certain districts. But that's definitely a conversation. And the other part of it to remember is, if folks are going to get it, they're going to get it. They can buy it off the black market on the street. They can go to, when the borders open, there's dispensaries in Saint Jean and Montreal. There's some in Maine. There are others in Massachusetts. That's part of this decision, is this marketplace is surrounding us, and it's probably coming to our state and our community, whether we want it to or not. So if we can do good solid planning work to make sure that when it does arrive here, that it's under our conditions and our prescriptive requirements. And if we look at that as from a protecting youth perspective, I think we'll make some pretty solid decisions, specifically around where the tax revenues go. The parks might just be a first idea. We may want to allot all the revenue to addiction prevention.
Brendan, we've lost you.
Really? Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Okay. So we have to figure out what we want to do with the tax revenues, whether it goes into the parks to benefit kids, if we're going to put it into ongoing donations to nonprofits specializing in addiction treatment, and exactly what we want to do for zoning. I think a lot of these conversations need to be had at the planning commission level, but they need to be at the direction of the select board. Very early on for us to hit any of these decisions. But I guess this is a good reminder that we need to start thinking about them now and move forward on a timeline as we see fit. Does anybody else have a public comment they'd like to suggest?
Oh, I just wanted to say a few things. From my perspective, I don't feel like it's a race we need to win. I'd almost rather see what other communities do and how that plays out. I have a huge concern for the youth. I don't know how many of you had middle schoolers when vaping came out, but of course you can get cannabis many places. But when it's on your corner and your older sibling can go buy it for you and your friends, or someone can go in and buy it and sell it to a kid in your town, accessibility goes way up. And there were many middle schoolers who were vaping at city school and town school. And it wasn't because they weren't educated or their parents weren't involved in their lives. It was just that accessible and that new. And for some reason, they thought it wasn't that bad for them. So that's a huge comparison, I think, to cannabis for me. And also, any kid who tries a substance before the age of 24, particularly before the age of 21, it will alter their brain development. They are more prone to addiction. They're more prone to use substances later in life. When you start young, there's very few good outcomes that come out of that. And right now in Vermont, adults who use can grow it themselves. They can get a prescription. They usually have access to it if they need it. But, this will probably go to a vote. And if everybody in town thinks this is a good idea and we move forward, I have questions around who's really benefiting. From what I know right now, there's no restrictions on the product having to come from Vermont or local growers. There could easily be someone from out of state moving in, opening up a shop and making money. I also have concerns. When I was in Colorado, I went into one of these shops just to check it out. And there's, gummy worms, chocolate, brownies, everything looks like candy in there. So can we restrict the edibles and the candy and those type of products so they're not as appealing to kids, and kids are going to be less likely, if they do try it, to try too much in one sitting. And I also have questions around the local option tax. I know originally the LOT was excluded from this. That might have changed by now. And then as far as the state tax revenue goes, it doesn't matter whether you opt in or out, every community gets the same benefits back from the state. So that wouldn't necessarily impact our tax revenue. So I don't know if you guys can answer the LOT question and if there are any local restrictions on product.
Happy to. And I can just explain that the tax breakdown right now under Act 64 is 14% excise tax. That specifically is appropriated to preventative programs right now. I think that has yet to be defined, but they label it as such. A 6% sales tax, which is currently being appropriated to universal aftercare programs. And then there is a 1% LOT. And I guess lastly, there are sort of a local fee, quote unquote, option, which is to take some of the fees that maybe localities incur, whether through their own control board or licensing, for the state to provide. They'll pay you back for some of those fees, reimbursements for some of your regulatory activities and administration. So that's the breakdown: 40% excise, 6% sales tax, and 1% local option tax.
Can I just respond as well quickly? Just to the question about the, Jessica, you did want to know about whether or not you can constrain what they're selling edible wise, is that right?
Yeah, edibles, and also is it, can we restrict it to Vermont growers and processors?
Yeah, so I don't think that the rules are established yet for where the retail stores have to get their product from. I wouldn't be surprised if the Vermont store owners were actually told to get X amount of percentage from local growers, but you are correct. There's going to most likely be cannabis products coming in, finished products coming in from out of state, California, maybe Washington, where people have been making these things and doing them for a while. However, you know, all of those things have tests, full panel tests associated with them to make sure it's safe. But the actual the town saying, or the state, maybe the state could, but the town saying, hey, listen, you know, we're worried about kids obviously and minors getting access to edibles because they look exactly like candy, which is very true. I don't think that's going to be possible. I feel like that would probably be like telling a liquor store they can't sell brightly colored liquor in bottles. You know what I mean? Like, I know it's not an apple for an apple, but I think it's going to be along those same lines where the town probably won't be able to prohibit the store from selling that kind of stuff.
Okay.
I mean, just very briefly, just to remind everyone, you know, federally cannabis is still illegal. So cannabis legally can't flow through state lines. So anything that is sold in our adult use marketplace for the foreseeable future will have to be produced in the state. With regards to maybe residency requirements, no, Vermont is not a state with residency requirements, so we can't. We expect there to be out of state competition. In fact, you know, 2/3 of our state licensed dispensaries are out of state, so they're already in our state. They've been in our state since 2007.
But I think it's important that they understand that in the future, there's definitely going to be out-of-state product coming in once the market develops. It may not be for the first couple of years, but they're absolutely going to be out of state.
I mean, to be fair, if anything, hopefully we're exporting it.
Yeah.
On that note, unless anybody else has any other questions. All right, seeing no hands up, we're going to thank Jack, Jeffrey, Crystal, and Amy for participating in tonight's discussion. And if there's anything that you want us all to know that you forgot to mention tonight, any of you, feel free to send it along to Carrie Johnson and myself, and we'll make sure that the rest of the board gets it. Thanks again, and you're welcome to stick around for the rest of our meeting. Actually, about to go into being the Liquor Control Board. Jack, I don't know if you're trying to to speak, you're muted at the
Oh,
moment.
sorry. Thank you, Amy, and thank you, Krista. It was nice meeting you.
Thank you all. It's
And
nice to see all
Thanks
of
to the
you.
board for giving me the couple minutes. I appreciate it. Thank you, Jeffrey, for
Thank you.
showing up.
All right, have a good night, everybody. So now we're gonna move on to, unless any last minute points on this discussion before we move on, board members? Okay.
Well,
Right.
I just want to, so if that new law passes or new bill passes as an act, there will be retail in every town. Is that correct?
I think that bill's.
Is that my understanding of that?
I think
By
that
2023.
that bill is pretty well dead. I don't know if Corey could touch on that, but it's nothing that we need to be concerned about, is my understanding.
I don't think anything this year you have to be concerned about.
Okay.
But I think the point is to nudge towns along to decide to put it on the ballot or not.
True.
What community in a little bit northeast of here failed it? I can't remember if it was Johnson or St. Johnsbury.
Richford failed, but Montgomery passed, I thought.
Yeah, and there was another one that failed.
I think Johnson passed, but it was close, but I don't remember off the top of my head.
Fair enough. All right. So I think we've talked about pot enough tonight, I think. Everybody sounds.
Ready to talk about alcohol?
Yeah, let's talk about alcohol now. So we need a.
Beverage mart.
There we go. So now we have one renewal for the Elks Lodge for their outside consumption. We just need to make a motion to recess the select board and to convene as the liquor control board.
Make a motion, we recess the select board meeting and convene as the liquor control board.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anna, any issues with this Elks Lodge outside consumption application?
No issues. It got mailed to the city by accident, and so they sent it to us. They have their first class and their third class already.
Would anyone like to make a motion to approve this license application for outside consumption?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is that our last license renewal of the year, Anna, you think?
That is, except for Maple City, is it Maple City Diner? They have an investigation to do, and then I'll bring it in front of the board.
Well, with that, let's make a motion to adjourn as the liquor control board and reconvene as the select board.
Make a motion, we adjourn as the liquor control board and reconvene as a select board.
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're back, and we already took care of 7A. So 7B, Carrie, I noticed in the red pen, no motion requested. This preferred site designation, does it not also require a letter from the select board?
Yeah, so that statement was incorrect. I'd like to retract that. As I talked to Corey and Jen today, we reviewed our policy. And the written policy actually states that we asked that they go to planning, which they did. They got a tentative approval for a letter. Then we asked the applicant, as Greg knows, to come to the select board, request a letter of support, and then from here and get a tentative letter of approval. And then the next step for him is to go to regional planning. Once he receives regional planning's support and hopefully without any conditions, then we'll sign both of those letters and he can go to the final step. So I would recommend that when we're at the end, if it's acceptable, that you make a motion to sign a letter should he get regional planning approval, if that makes sense to you.
So Corey, the planning commission already authorized its chair, Casey Toof, Representative Toof, to sign a letter on their behalf.
Yes.
All right, so we need, does anybody have any questions for Mr. Labor about the actual application we have in their packets before we entertain the cadence of how we make this approval? Okay, so like Carrie's mentioned in the past, we set up after a couple of applications, we set up a protocol of authorizing chairpersons to sign both at the planning commission and select board level as soon as the preferred site designation was given by regional planning. we felt that their staff and volunteers had a greater expertise, and that since all 3 letters are required to achieve the status, that we would basically allow them to do the heavy lifting. So, Mr. Labor, is there anything you'd like to add to your application before we consider a motion?
No, not really. I just, it's a nice site. Power would be sent back to local businesses and stuff like that. It's a site that really is not developable at all. It's a filled site that was done about 20 years ago. That's probably about it. Will is on the phone with us too. He's my permit specialist and facilitator of the design. He might want to add some things.
Yeah, my name's Will Veve. I'm a solar developer, and I'm working with Greg and his company to get the permits for this project. It's a really good project site. Like Greg said, it's part of his subdivision. It's about 1.2 acres. It's in your packet. It is conventionally undevelopable for a highest and best use, like another home, mostly due to the soils and the lack of wastewater. So having a use through the designation of a preferred site, which gives it its highest and best rate for the credits that come out, is a really good overall benefit use for the land. And as Greg was saying, the net meter credits are going to go back to local businesses. The RECs are getting retired to Green Mountain Power, and the electricity, which is the third part, is going to go right back into the system and be distributed when it's generating the most power, which is during the summer. Other than that, it's the process that we're going through. Like it was said, we went to the Planning Commission and they voted unanimously to sign the letter. We're here as our second step, and ultimately regional planning will have the same information put in front of them. One of the, I guess, complexities of how this all goes is regional planning doesn't usually do anything until the full petition's put forward, and they may ask that, like with the Planning Commission, was there support, and that's what we're looking for here today, is a vote on deeming the site preferred, which is ultimately up to each board. As far as heavy lifting goes on the permit side, this is a pretty straightforward permit on a site that's already been impacted. So I would love the ability to answer any questions that the select board might have about the site, so that there isn't really any misunderstanding over what is going to happen throughout the permit process. Because the next step that you guys will receive as a party to the solar permit, which you've probably been through before if you've been on the board for a long time, or may not have. I'm not familiar with your board, so that's going to be a 45-day notice. And we have not put out the 45-day notice yet, but that is going to happen pretty much immediately following this meeting. So that will have the site layout, design, and all of the other inputs for the full permit. And this is a great time to be able to answer any questions you might have before you see the 45-day notice, because that you'll also have the ability to comment or make questions, or anything that comes up in that notice period is when we want to get through any of the comments. And then obviously once the full application is put in, there's another period for comments, and then hopefully the permit is issued sometime this year, depending on what the PUC is going through for load, permit load, that is. So I don't know if the board has any questions, but we're here to answer them.
Anyone have any questions? Hearing none. Aaron? Sorry.
The only question I had was, it seemed like the site, at least based on the satellite imagery, it had what looks like some natural kind of screening already. Would that be preserved at all, or would additional screening be added on the site, or is it sloped in such a way that that's not a concern?
We're going to preserve as much of the screening that's available based on the elevation. The fill site is at a different elevation than the other homes, and we'll be doing a full Kichi analysis of the site to make sure that there's no undue adverse impacts. And it's already well suited to where it is because it's pretty much hidden based on that intervening topography and the growth vegetation. We want to keep everything we can and not plant, but if we have to put plants in, we will, and they'll match the natural surroundings. We're not going to just put in a quick growing pine that doesn't work there. So we take good care in that at all of the projects that we've developed.
Any questions? Well, and following our normal protocol that we established, I think 2 years ago, I know Al Vogel was still with us, so it's been at least 2 years. We would ask the board to consider a motion to authorize me to sign a letter deeming this as a preferred site once regional planning has made that determination, unless the board would like to deviate from our previously established.
So moved.
Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we'll get that letter as soon as we receive notification from either you both or regional that they've made that determination, and we look forward to it. So good luck with your permitting process, and if you need anything from us, feel free to contact our staff.
Excellent. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so we're on to the last item. That actually doesn't require any motions. It's just an Act 250 filing. I don't believe there's anything we need to comment on that one, even though it is the St. Albans City Pool. So I don't have anything. I'm sorry, John and Alan just left because there's an emergency they had to deal with. So we didn't have any questions for them at this point. I don't have any motions. I don't have any surprises for you under town manager's report, and that's it for me this evening.
Okay, does anybody on staff have any questions for Carrie? I'm not on staff, on the board, sorry, get the two groups confused. Seeing none, agenda item 9 is scheduled. At our next meetings on Monday, May 17th and Monday, June 7th. Wondering if anybody, and if you don't.
It's unfortunate timing. Oh, Brendan froze, and I don't know what he was going to talk about.
Am I back yet?
You are back just now. Right after you said, I wonder, we lost you.
Okay, so feel free to not answer, but I'm inquiring on vaccination statuses. I'll start with myself. I got my first, thanks to Jessica. She helped get me in the NMC downtown clinic a little early. I go back for my second on Julianne's birthday, the 11th. I think Corey's on the same exact schedule as me.
Fully vaccinated. Yoo-hoo.
Perfect.
Me too.
I'm looking specifically to hear from Carrie, Jonathan, Brian, Jessica, Aaron, and Jen.
I'm one shot down, one coming May, the second one coming May 20th.
I'm fully vaccinated, and I'm fine with meeting in person on May, is it 17th? Jen doesn't need to be there though. We've already discussed it. She can do everything she's currently does virtually. I don't know that she has to be in the room.
With Jen's commute, it may make sense to just do that regardless going forward.
Right.
If that's okay with Jen. I mean, it's never nice to come out of a 9 o'clock board meeting and have to drive 40 minutes back to Cambridge.
And then eat dinner.
Yeah.
I just have
So
a
I
question.
thank you.
If we meet in person, does that, I know that when during the pandemic, it was, like, we're still in the pandemic, when we were meeting in person, we sometimes had difficulties with balancing Zoom so that the public could participate and us at the same time. Would Northwest Access TV still be able to be there? I'm just thinking, if we're meeting, does that make it so that we need to also make it so the public can meet in person and,
For the first month or two, I would want to set it up the same way that we operated under last year with Zoom for the public only. And we could have a discussion at a board level, maybe with some input from good quality folks at the health department as what our rights are, and establishing maybe even a vaccine requirement for our board meetings to attend in person, if that's legal. Or I know Jessica and Carrie and I have touched base individually about that today, preparing for this discussion.
I feel like Vermont League of Cities and Towns is probably going to be our better source for that kind of guidance as far as requirements. The health department doesn't weigh in on those kinds of things. Or ACCD would be another source.
We'll chase those points down, but would anybody have an objection to going back to have the board in person in our boardroom at Town Hall and have public by Zoom on the 7th?
Personally, I think since we put an office in down there, I think if we're gonna have company i.e. as far as the public, I mean, the new town garage has a huge space. That's just my feeling.
It's the
Until we can get the new town hall built.
well, the boardroom has the television for Zoom and a lot of the IT infrastructure that Northwest Access would need is in the boardroom. And a solid internet connection and whatnot.
I'm just thinking if you put like 20 people in there, it's not.
Yeah, for the first few meetings, at least we'll just have the board and staff, and we'll only be allowing the public by Zoom. The determination at the moment. Does that sound okay to everybody? Back at it the 17th.
Yeah, just so people know, I am fully vaccinated, and if you or anyone in your family needs an appointment, we have extra doses every day. So just let me know. Yeah. Happy to get you in.
Yeah, I had my second one about 3 weeks ago too, so I should be good.
Perfect. Yep. Okay. So if we're all set with that, let's plan on it. And if anything changes, we'll let you know in advance of the meeting. But 6:30 on the 17th at Town Hall for the board and staff minus Jen. Anna, you're more than welcome to Zoom in if you're more comfortable from home too. Same goes to Alan and John. If they feel the need to attend for any reason. So does anybody have anything else to add under schedule? Okay, so my report is simple. Still working on a website and the logo, if you might notice, I kind of jumped the gun a little bit. Got 2 things done right off the bat by Main Street Graphics, and I bought them both at Lenny's. This was $13. It was a steal on clearance. The one thing we'll have to consider is if we're going to buy new logo merch for the staff, how much, where the money is going to come from, and what we would like to do for volunteers. It would be really nice to maybe get some kind of a matching article of clothing for every elected person and volunteer. And we'll open it up also. I'll work with either Main Street Graphics or another local vendor to set up an online store with the new logo, so that if you would like to purchase anything for yourself or your family, that you can do that right online and have it embroidered by a local company. I have nothing really else for tonight. Everything's going extremely well at the staff level. We were disappointed not to receive an earmark from Congressman Welch, but Corey and Carrie did a great job at the last minute in putting that application together, because you can't get it unless you ask. So we want to thank them for that. And then I had a couple of basic questions from Alan related to Cohen Park, but we're going to save those and I'll just ask them Carrie. I'll reach out to Carrie tomorrow. As we know, the only appropriate way for an individual board member to contact a member of staff is through the manager. have to remind myself of that pretty often. So you'll see in the one thing for the board, you'll see in the Cohen Park budget that we estimated around $10,000 for fencing, and it came in, the low bid was 26. So we needed to find roughly 16 to 20,000. And as we know, a portion of every impact fee we receive is just a parks and recreation. And in working with Anna to check what we have on hand in our impact fee checkbook under that isolated account, we have about 24,500 bucks roughly, including this year's revenues.
So far.
So far. And the whole point of the impact fee and the impact fee ordinance is to use new residential growth to offset costs of expanding services and assets. So if we're expanding our offerings by taking our one basketball court in Bay Park and creating 2 more, because we've got all these new residents that want to use our parks and rec infrastructure, I think it would be entirely appropriate to take that overage directly from the impact fee reserve dedicated to parks and rec. So if nobody has an objection to that, that's what we'll do. You're going to notice in the warrants, as Alan noted, Carrie, whoever did the nice chicken scratch in our packets for the Cohen Park budget, these cost centers are going to come out of different line items within our expense reports. You'll notice that, like I questioned earlier, the $6,500, we saw $5,000 tonight charged to the dock expense. Having not read that the renovation budget before I read the general fund warrant, it looked like a typo. So you may see those and may make you question it. Just feel free to check back with this original budget. My only question for Alan is if we're receiving 3 bids on anything over $5,000, but and we can chase that down tomorrow. I know we received 3 bids for the fencing. Yeah.
The bids for the fencing, the 3 bids for the fencing were in the packet as well, just for reference, because I find it's kind of useful when you talk about that kind of money to know the range, or they should have been, because it was one from Furic Fences. I don't know, I can't read their company.
Yeah, we got all 3 of them in there, and you know they.
So so he is getting bids when appropriate at this point.
And at a staff level, I noticed we were talking about finishes related to the parking lot and roping areas off. Is that those decisions being run up a flagpole? There's more than one more than one person making those decisions. Yeah.
Are you asking of? I don't understand what the question is. I mean, did every decision he made over there get run by me or Corey? Nope. He is explaining this budget and how he's doing it, but I did not talk to him about those decisions, like the flower pots, if that's what you're asking.
Fair enough. As long as, but I guess I'd like to use this as an opportunity to say that, you know, we're gonna, as we continue to do more in the town and have more projects, we should come up with like a project review sheet that we check against every new project. Like, do we need a permit? Like this one, we did. We needed an application for the Development Review Board for a site plan approval, and we're on their next agenda. But it would be cool if, you know, just normalizing things.
Yep.
You know, in years past, it would have been considered highly inappropriate and against the best interests of the town to spend this money on, you know, a frivolous expenditure such as a park improvement. But this board, I think, feels pretty different about.
And honestly, I think there's 3 people at our site visit tonight, and that's a pretty high number for us. And they all seemed in support of our project, which is also unusual. If someone's against it, they will definitely come out more times than not. So.
I just had a quick question, and maybe this was explained and I just wasn't picking up on what on the detail. But for the impact fees, were they the fees that were, or the amount that we're talking about to help cover the cost of the fence? I don't, because that's the impact fee for that, I don't have on the face of it, don't have a problem with that. I'm just wondering if those fees had been previously anticipated and previously allocated to any other projects, and if that's going to impact anything else that we had in the pipeline.
In your pipeline, Aaron, and that's a good question. Whenever the town collects impact fees, so much goes to every single cost center, like the fire department, Parks and Rec, general government. And I believe I sent Brendan what we had at the end of FY20 and what we've collected as far as 4/30/2021. And there was enough to cover the expenses. My position, which I talked to Alan today, is there's not enough at the end of FY20 to cover the expenses, but we're working in FY21. And I would rather, like, if we need a new fence for $29,000, I'd rather wait until July of FY22 to pay for those to end FY21, so everything is clean and transparent. But
And
there is,
Aaron, if your question was in regards to our capital improvement program, I think there could be a few things that get pushed forward, because I think we had allocated some level of impact fees coming in. I don't
True.
remember exactly how much that is right
True.
now.
I don't remember capital improvement, I just remember impact fees.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but we had tagged some of those revenue streams with projects, so.
True.
Yeah. It's a good question. We'll look into it so I can answer it better.
Okay, thanks.
And we're just trying to cover the delta between what we budgeted and what the bids came in at. So it's I think Alan was looking for like 16 to 20,000, somewhere in that ballpark, and we have 24,500 on hand at the moment.
True, as of 4/30.
Right. And the legality surrounding impact fees are that you have to spend it within 7 years of receiving it, or it's due back to the person who paid it. So that was something that we had an issue with 4 years ago, was that we had so much impact fee money on hand that it had gotten almost dangerous, to the point where if someone who had paid a fee at that point in 2012 or 2010, they could have come through the door and said, where exactly did my money go? And it would not have been easy for us to provide an answer at that point. So normalizing spending this revenue as it comes in, more or less as an ongoing stream, we could use it to offset park equipment purchases, or use it as a ongoing slush fund for park improvements, or we could use it as seed money for grant applications. It's definitely a good tool to have in our tool belt. Someone who is on the record about 1 million times saying that he hates impact fees, it's a good tool to have in our tool belt.
Me.
So does anybody have any other questions related to Cohen before we?
I got a couple, Brendan. So I'm just, so how does it go from like 65 to 75? Now we're going to be over 100,000 and everybody's just okay with it. Like the rest of the select board doesn't get to decide, that other 25%. It just, project moves forward. I'm having a hard time with it. Like nobody tells us,
That's what we're doing right now.
What do you mean, 65 to 100,000? I don't get it.
Because the first round, it was like I thought it was said that the project was going to cost between 65 and 75,000. Now we're up over 100, and I don't even see the concrete flower pots or whatever on there. I'm just, so when's it going to stop? Is the next select board meeting? Oh, now we're up to 125. Because look at
No, well, that's not what's going to happen, actually. I mean, that's why we went to the select board at the last meeting, and that's why we're having the discussion tonight, because this is an extraordinary project, and that's why you guys are seeing it. So no additional expenses will be approved without your approval. I will not approve any more expenses since we're already doing this special project. No, I'm going to take it really seriously. So I'm sorry, you can finish what you're saying.
We haven't even been in front of the DRB yet, and we're down there digging stuff. Should we have silt fences up in case we get hard rains and washes the water, the soil towards the lake? I'm just asking.
Yep. We will definitely address that, but let's talk about the budget thing, which sounded to be more of a concern right now.
I thought you were done with it.
I just
Yeah.
had a quick
Yeah,
clarifying
that's where I was coming from. I didn't know we had moved from Cohen Park to Town Hall.
I just had a quick question. I just want to clarify, because I think it relates to Jonathan's question. So, I mean, we're not being asked to use the impact fees today. I mean, we would have to do a motion, I would assume, to allow that. And it sounds like we, at least I had some questions around how we were going to use that or how it might have been previously allocated. So, but there's no decision being made today. We're just kind of getting an update on what the fees might be, and then is it next time that we make a decision about that?
No, I mean, to be fair, that's a fair question. We were asking to spend the money today because there's about a 6 to 8 week lead time at the very minimum on the fence. But if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and we'll wait a couple weeks. Because right now the budget that we had presented was at $74,028, and we had estimated, give or take, about $10,000 for the fence, but it came in 15,000 over that. So if you add another 25, we are, to Jonathan's estimate, we're close to 100. But that is utilizing those fees. So if you want to know what we previously planned to spend those park and rec fees on, I don't know that tonight. I don't know that one.
Right, so, yeah, like Carrie stated, we're
I have
looking.
not gotten any of those numbers.
So we're looking to move forward, by consensus.
Oh my
We
God.
don't need a motion to authorize staff to move forward. Under statute, Carrie has the ability as the manager to expense any money as long as she's within her lane, and then we have the opportunity to say yes or no and passing the warrant. I guess we can preemptively make a motion, or we can decide to allow that expense on that revenue line.
That would be my preference really at this point, because this is a special, it's pretty popular and worthwhile project, but it's different than other projects.
And I'm just wondering, can we make a motion if it wasn't specifically on the, like it listed as one of the agenda items at this point?
We're not, this definitely isn't set up to be a motion, given that we don't normally make motions on expenses unless it's by approving the warrant like we did earlier.
It's true.
We've already started executing this budget though, like we had pointed out, we've already, the nets and the hoops are here. We just spent $5,000 on the general fund warrant that we approved tonight on this. To Jonathan's point, this is not a normal project. This is trying to find one-time monies and put them into a project that the whole community can enjoy. Impact fees, it's a sustaining revenue, but each fee is a one-time money received. So look at it from that lens. So yeah, we're at about $101,000. If you quickly add this up, we're at 65 the last meeting. I said on Facebook myself, I expected the budget to come in around 75, and I thought that was giving us wiggle room. But yeah, again, it's $100 grand. Don't get me wrong, it's a lot of money. Wait until we have some discussions about our town hall budget next meeting, though. We'll see if 100 grand is a lot of money. It's going to be a very different discussion. To Aaron's point, I did not personally investigate how the impact fee existing reserve dollars would have been allocated. And we're receiving that as an ongoing revenue source, so depleting that reserve may not be consequential for any other project. So the objective is to still leave this meeting with consensus that this budget is all right and that impact fees as a funding source for the fence is an appropriate use. So I guess we're looking to hear opinions if we want to go around a circle. I'll start with Brian. You've been fairly quiet, new board member. How do you perceive this discussion?
Jonathan's point is a very good one. I'll definitely say that. It caused me to think, Jonathan, as I'm looking at this, because you're right, I guess it was 65 and now 100. the point, hopefully this isn't how other projects go with the money part. But I would say it's overall still worthwhile. And I would say I would probably vote to say go with what we've got now.
It is, just to refresh everyone's mind,
Mhm.
a very good example of how you'd use impact fees,
Mhm.
because it's an expanded use. Just,
Yeah, that part definitely makes sense to me. I mean, that's
Does.
an impact. We're adding a new piece.
Yep.
I guess I'm just, it'd be good to, yeah, so I have my head wrapped around this. So if my neighbors ask me, I'm ahead of it before they are. That's all.
Thanks. We'll hear from Brian. Jessica?
Yeah, I think that, you know, both to Jonathan's point about the increase in the money and Aaron's to what are we pushing aside to do this, those are both concerns. But I also think, you know, we have a lot on our project list, and it's been hard for us to pick one, I think, to move forward with. And although this is a lot of money, if we were to put it off, it will cost a lot more money to do in the future because Alan was able to get such a good deal with the paving. So it's not like we'll be able to do this again for the same price. This is kind of like an opportunity. It's a lot of money, but it's probably a good use of our money. And it does seem to have a lot of really positive feedback from the community already. I mean, worst case, I think we could have the tennis court without the fence and have people chasing their balls all over if we had to, but it would be nice to just have it done.
Aaron? I know you noted a concern, but just want to check in.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I still think my concern is just, I feel like we wouldn't be doing our due diligence just as a board of just understanding, you know, just what we're kind of committing to, without kind of thinking about what other commitments we've made. And again, maybe it's still, I'm still relatively new to all this. So if I'm missing a key step in the process and, you know, the impact fees did not factor into our additional planning because they are, you know, funds that come one time and we can't really anticipate how much they're going to be. You know, if this is totally unallocated, typically, you know, to me, I feel like and I do feel like having this park and moving it along is important to the town. It's certainly something that people are excited to have, and it gets people out and enjoying the nice weather when it comes about. I think that, you know, I would be, given that the project itself is a valuable one to the town, in this instance, I would be okay with going forward as is, but I feel like any additional allocations really need to come forward with like a cost benefit analysis of some kind, or not, like, it doesn't have to be, that sounds way more detailed than it needs to be, but just knowing what we're saying when we say yes to something, what we might be saying no to or pausing, because we do have a lot on our plate. And I think we were really ambitious and tried to keep things, we were ambitious and also tried to keep things as flat as possible going into this year. So I just didn't think we had that much wiggle room with this project. And that's where I'm concerned what we might unwittingly be saying no to something that is also important.
Just to add, I do like your idea, Brendan, of having some sort of program approval or project approval steps for us to go through. So it does have I mean, not to add more levels of approval and bureaucracy, but just so everybody can kind of weigh in on what we're doing with the funds.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it has to include the financial aspect of it. You know, like we're looking at this budget on our letterhead with some handwriting in it. You know, in a perfect world, this project would have moved in a very sequential manner. In order to, you know, maximizing the opportunity, we had to move pretty quickly. So this has definitely been a weird project, and it's the most, for lack of a better term, disorganized one that I've ever been a part of. But it's also going to have probably the best payout for the community for the money. Before we circle back to Jonathan, I'll make my point, that way he gets the last word. Standing at Cohen Park tonight, it's several hundred feet of pretty pristine lakefront with westerly facing views of Lake Champlain. Part of me loves the idea that we're taking a property in a location that you usually do have to achieve a certain socioeconomic status to be able to enjoy, and we're improving it to allow for additional use for essentially 3 communities. One of the common complaints about Cohen Park is a lot of the people that leave turn left, go back to Swanton. A lot of the folks that use Cohen Park live in St. Albans City. So it's something that we're doing with about $100,000 now that'll essentially benefit half the county. So that's something that I really like to see. One thing I'm also concerned about, more in Jonathan's perspective, is, 10, 11 years ago, there was an article related to Cohen Park for maybe $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, and it failed. Voters failed it. And I get concerned that if we do, this is a one-time project that I think will be fairly popular, and the payout will be tremendous. I think it'll be well received. But we can't make a habit out of doing projects like this, because our taxpayers will lose confidence in us, and we'll go back to the days of having to ask voter permission to buy, a $5,000 piece of equipment for the parks. Being in a position to be able to take one-time savings and one-time revenue around 100,000 and investing it in a project. The last time we did anything close to that was we found about $50,000 in the general fund budget, and we spent $50,000 on refurbishing Bay Park gates, JL Masonry. And notice we had them tented in the winter, and we provided Jay some work. And we overspent a $5,000 line by 50 grand. If you looked at our expense reports, that line was over by 1,000%, and that drew us some negative attention. So we're going to have to be very well educated on this. I don't know if in the next week or so, if staff could work on putting together a pretty good brief of the project, maybe to include our DRB application and any site drawings submitted to the DRB. We should all be reading the DRB minutes from that hearing to see what the questions were, if anybody from the public attended to say anything, and if that's anything that we should have heard. We'll have to do a very good job of understanding and explaining the project. Those are just my concerns. I think it's definitely worth doing. I have to note the absolute fact that it's basically in my backyard. So I'm a little, I could be perceived to be a little biased, but I look at it more or less not for me or my kids, but it's a beautiful property with westerly facing lakefront, Lake Champlain, that not everybody has the joy without having it be a really nice cultural park. So any investment we make, more the better. Jonathan, you get last word.
I'm all set, Brendan.
Right. So to your point, if this budget goes up at all, we're coming back before we spend anything. That's been kind of the rule between Carrie and I. And there's some emails that somebody could FOIA request that it's me explaining to Carrie the absolute importance of bringing every expenditure in front of this board. This is not a normal project. So from a sense, we're micromanaging the project at a necessity. And everything we learn along the way will be good food for thought for the eventual development of a project checklist or a procedure.
I got one question, actually.
Yeah, sure.
So are we going with a 10-foot fence or a 12-foot fence?
That was one of my questions for Alan. Carrie, would you be able to ask him tomorrow?
Oh, okay.
Would you be able to ask him tomorrow, Carrie, and maybe shoot Jonathan an email?
The quotes that I'm reading will say they're 10 feet.
There's a quote in there.
But the Lafayette one says they're 12 feet.
12, yeah.
But they were the most expensive one. So he was going not with the most expensive one, and that was
Right.
a 10-foot.
Right. But, we should compare apples to apples. I mean, 12-foot and 10-foot is,
Different. Yeah, definitely.
2 feet more. That's 20%.
Yeah, but he's not, I think he had to, trying to reduce the budget was going with the lower bid, so the 10 feet one, yes, it's shorter, but because the budget came in so incredibly high. So if I ask him what's he planning on putting in, I will ask him that.
Oh,
but my
just
guess
10,
is-
right?
Yeah, I'm thinking he's gonna go with the 10.
Right.
Well, I
But should
think
we
it-
ask Lafayette for another quote for a 10-foot fence? Maybe they're cheaper. I don't know.
Maybe. I'd hope so, but I don't know. Yeah, we can ask.
All right, so does anybody have any other points or questions? Hi, hearing none.
One other quick one. I don't want to beat a dead horse too bad, but so Alan mentioned something about some sinks in the bathrooms down there. He bought at Lowe's, something he's replacing them, he said earlier.
He did say that, but I didn't know if it was the sinks. I know he said all the stalls and the walls were being upgraded.
Right. Well, I heard him anyway. So I
And the
just
door.
want to, so are those bathrooms handicapped down there? Is one of them like handicapped?
I believe
Right.
so, but honestly, I haven't been in them in so long, I can't recall at this point.
So if he's just changing the fixtures out, he's fine. He can do that. But if he doesn't, if he makes sure that he puts in ADA approved fixtures, if he takes something out, that's all.
That's where it comes in handy to have a master plumber, a former 10-year teacher, now a financial advisor, a health and wellness professional, and then a director at the health department all on one board. You get a lot of cool perspectives and good reminders. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to add?
I have something on a little bit different topic, but still with the parks.
Mhm.
Okay. So we actually received a nice grant, just to let you guys know, from the Vermont Arts Council. We were 5, there were many applicants, but we're 1 out of 5, and we got just over $10,000. And we're going to use it to install a large wood carving of Champ in the Bay Park. And it's going to be big enough that kids can climb on it. The name of the grant was Animating Infrastructure. So they wanted pieces that were also part of infrastructure. And then there'll also be some benches made that are going to be carved into different native species shapes. And there's going to be some informative panels on them. We're going to partner with the museum to find the right information to put on the panels. So it also shares some of the history of the area. So there's some good news on the parks. And a lot of it was John Montaigne's idea, and he found the artist and has done a lot of the legwork to make it happen. So some good news for us. Free money is always great. And I have to thank Coy Boynton. She actually wrote the grant. I did the preliminary application, and then she did the in-depth application for us. And Rise Vermont helped fund her work to do that.
Sweet.
Great.
Awesome.
I got one more thing. I'm glad to see that both north gates are open. That was kind of nice. And so I see tonight they're playing softball. I guess there's some softball leagues that are playing down there. Are the bathrooms open yet? Just a question.
No, they're not supposed to be open till the end of the month, and they were informed of that. But there are portalets there that are.
Okay. I just didn't know if they got opened early too. That's all.
Too scary with the temperature at this time.
Right.
Needed. Does anybody else have anything to add under other business before we head into executive session? All right, hearing nothing, if anybody would like to make our tongue twister motion.
I'll go for it. Let's see here. I'll make a motion to go into executive session to discuss legal, contractual, or personnel issues where premature general public knowledge of the subject matter would place the town or person involved at a substantial disadvantage, and further move to make a motion to enter into executive session to discuss legal, contractual, or personnel issues under the provisions of Title I, Section 313A1 of Vermont statutes, and to invite the town manager.
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.